Dubai, a dazzling marvel rising from the dust, a symbol of boundless prosperity, and the only safe haven in a perpetually volatile Middle East. Those were the flattering words once used to describe the landing place of billionaires' private jets. However, the shock in February 2026 seems to have changed everything. As reports of missiles and drones striking UAE territory began to surface, the belief that Dubai is untouchable was exposed as a fragile illusion. Perhaps we need to be honest with each other. What is happening is not merely a typical economic downturn that you usually see on charts. It affects everyone, even those who seem completely unrelated on the other side of the globe. But why would a collapse happening half a world away concern someone enjoying dinner with their family in the United States? Could your investment portfolio, or even the prices at your local store, be pulled into this spiral? Let's explore that in this video. In just 3 short weeks of March 2026, the Dubai Financial Market, DFM, Real Estate Index, recorded a free fall of more than 30%. To put that into perspective, think back to the 2008 financial crisis we all lived through. Back then, the S&P 500 took 6 months to lose 30% of its value. Yet in this city of the future, everything happened so fast that if you blinked while checking the ticker on your iPhone, billions of dollars may have just vanished. The estimated losses stand at around $250 billion. It seems that the amount of wealth wiped out in an instant exceeds the entire GDP of Portugal. Luxury villas on Palm Jumeirah, once listed for tens of millions of dollars to global tycoons and the ultra-wealthy, are now seeing urgent sale signs popping up everywhere like mushrooms after rain. Do you remember 2008? Back then, we had real assets, real houses, even if their values were inflated. But in Dubai, it seems an economy was built on promises and spectacle. This collapse is not unfolding by quarter or by year, it is happening day by day. This is a true stampede. Moreover, much of this market is driven by foreign capital and layered debt. When safety, the one thing keeping those American Express Gold and Platinum cards functioning here, is shaken by gunfire and missiles, investors are not just pulling out, they are fleeing for their lives. Doesn't that strike you as strange? You were once told that Dubai was a safe storm shelter, where your money would grow without worries about taxes or political instability. But when geopolitical reality comes knocking with explosive force, that thin layer of gold plating seems to be peeling away faster than anyone could have imagined. Perhaps we are beginning to realize that no tax break can compensate for the absence of a real defense system. Dubai once wanted the world to look at it as a wonder, and now the world truly is watching, just not in the way it had hoped. What do you think? Are we witnessing the end of a lavish dream built on sinking sand? Let's be honest for a moment. Dubai was never truly a manufacturing city in the way we understand Detroit or Pittsburgh in their prime. It doesn't produce steel, nor does it manufacture high-end Lambos. Instead, it has been selling an intangible yet expensive commodity: safety. For decades, it maintained a highly successful illusion that no matter how volatile the surrounding region became, Dubai would remain an untouchable oasis. That is why investors were willing to pour billions of dollars into it. But when reports of security threats and military incidents began appearing in rapid succession in February and March 2026, that safety bubble seemed to burst. When you look at your portfolio on apps like Charles Schwab or Fidelity, you probably understand that rule number 1 of the game is always capital preservation before profit, and that is exactly where the Dubai logic breaks down. When gunfire erupts, promises of 15-20% returns from luxury apartments suddenly become meaningless. Investors are no longer concerned with how much more they can make. They are asking, how do I get my principal back before everything turns to ashes? Perhaps the most telling sign is that Western embassies simultaneously raise their travel advisories to the highest level. When the U.S. government warns its citizens about security risks, it is no longer a polite reminder, it is a death knell for tourism and investment. It feels somewhat ironic that a city once proud of standing outside all conflicts now finds itself at the center of the storm. The affluent travelers who once flew business class on luxury flights are now likely considering changing their tickets to return somewhere more grounded, perhaps a quiet home in Florida or Arizona. After all, we may be realizing that a city built as a luxury brand can only survive when the skies are clear and calm. When dark clouds gather, those tallest towers in the world begin to look like giant lightning rods waiting for a storm they were never prepared to face. Would anyone still dare to bet on an oasis where even its protectors are eyeing the exits? It seems like we all already know the answer, don't we? There is a truth that glossy travel brochures rarely mention. Dubai is essentially a city of people waiting for their next flight. With roughly 88% to 90% of its population being foreigners, it feels more like a massive hotel than a real country. And as you know about hotel guests, when a fire alarm goes off, they don't stop to help put out the fire. They grab their Samsonite suitcase, take their passport, and head straight for the exit. Preliminary reports indicate that in just the first month of the 2026 crisis, around 40,000 foreign professionals left Dubai. These are engineers, doctors, and CFOs people who, just yesterday, were likely swiping their Visa Gold card to pay for luxury dinners. And when Fortune 500 companies begin considering relocating their regional headquarters, the already fragile confidence seems to shatter even further. You can build the tallest tower in the world with concrete and steel, but you cannot build loyalty on land where people come only to avoid taxes. Look at what they take with them when they leave. It's not just clothes or souvenirs. First is the education system. Dubai's private education sector, worth over $2 billion and serving hundreds of thousands of students, now appears to be on the brink of emptiness. As expat families leave, those glossy international schools may soon become museums of a lost golden era. Second is the collapse in purchasing power. Each departing household seems to take tens of thousands of dollars in annual spending out of the economy. From brand new Cadillacs and showrooms to ocean view penthouses, everything now appears to be waiting for new owners who may never come. Perhaps the cost of building a paradise entirely dependent on foreigners is that when a crisis hits, you find yourself standing alone among wonders without people. It seems that a fundamental truth was forgotten. A city needs a heart and a soul, not just a roster of temporary professionals ready to leave at the sound of the first alarm siren. You know, there's an image always used to promote Dubai. Massive Airbus, a 380 jets from Emirates lining up to land, carrying a flood of money and tourists from around the world. That is the lifeline, the heartbeat of this desert city. Yet if you look up at Dubai's sky these days in April 2026, you will likely see an eerie silence. The vision of a global connectivity hub seems to be fading faster than smoke. According to the latest data, tourism has dropped by as much as 70%. Imagine the gold-plated halls of Dubai International Airport, once busier than Times Square on New Year's Eve, now seemingly turning into stages for drifting desert dust. What is most striking is not just the emptiness, but the fact that major airlines like British Airways, Lufthansa, and Cathay Pacific have all announced suspensions of their routes to Dubai, at least until May 2026. In business, emotions rarely have a place. When insurance experts in London or New York assess war risk as too high, airlines will not gamble with aircraft worth hundreds of millions of dollars. They would rather have customers vacationing on beaches in California than risk flying into an uncertain airspace. Shopping centers like Dubai Mall, once proud to attract more visitors than the Eiffel Tower, now seem to be turning into modern-day ghost cities. You can walk through Hermes or Louis Vuitton stores without any crowd, but that luxury only highlights the strange emptiness. And when it comes to the aviation crisis, the name Emirates inevitably comes up. This airline is not just a transportation company. It is the soul, the pride, and perhaps the greatest marketing machine of Dubai. When the world looks at Emirates, they see an unbeatable Dubai. But with a business model entirely dependent on international transit passengers, a closed sky is a fatal blow. As ultra-luxury aircraft sit idle on runways, maintenance costs and debt obligations are likely consuming the last reserves faster than anyone expected. You know, trust is the most expensive commodity of all. Once travelers feel uncertain about whether their return flight might be canceled due to military incidents, they will choose a safer option, perhaps a vacation at Marriott resorts within the United States, where the only gunfire they hear is in action movies. It seems Dubai forgot that a city built as the world's stopover will collapse the moment the world decides not to stop anymore. No matter how much gold lines the walls, if Boeing or Airbus planes are not landing, it all becomes nothing more than expensive real estate suspended in a void. Imagine putting your lifetime retirement savings into a bet on a luxury apartment that does not even exist yet, based solely on promises of a bright future. In Dubai, this is not uncommon. In fact, about 60% of real estate transactions are off-plan, meaning buying when the property is still just an empty patch of sand. When confidence and safety evaporates, these projects suddenly shift from gold mines into worthless blocks of concrete. No one wants to keep pouring money into construction sites sitting within the crosshairs of geopolitical instability. Worse still, you might own an American Express Centurion card, But even that won't help when developers can no longer raise capital to complete projects. Those promised future wonders may soon turn into modern ruins monuments to overconfidence. Take a look at how the financial system here operates. It appears to be built on a house of cards, where even a light breeze, let alone a military conflict, is enough to bring everything down. As risk rises, banks and financial institutions seem to be freezing lending activity. They may be adopting the caution of major institutions on Wall Street, but in Dubai, a credit freeze is like cutting off a diver's oxygen supply. Massive real estate conglomerates, once considered too big to fail, now appear to be on the brink of cascading defaults. As individual investors stop making payments on unbuilt homes, the cash flow of these giants seems to dry up as well. Does this feel familiar? It seems like an upgraded and worse version of what we have seen before, except this time, it is happening in a place without a real manufacturing base to support it. Perhaps, instead of dreaming about skyscrapers in the desert, holding tangible and stable assets back home is a far wiser decision. After all, a real house in the United States still seems far more reliable than a luxurious promise sinking into the sand, wouldn't you agree? Let's talk about Jebel Ali Port. If you've ever worked in transportation or manufacturing, you know this is not just a port. It is a logistics marvel, handling more than 14 million containers a year. But here's the reality. All that scale now seems to be held hostage by its own geography. Jebel Ali sits right behind the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most sensitive geopolitical choke points on the planet. As security risks in the area increased in early 2026, Dubai's center-of-the-world advantage suddenly began to look like a deadly trap. You can have the most advanced infrastructure, but if shipping giants like Maersk and major cargo operators start worrying about insurance and security, they won't hesitate to reroute. It seems carriers are beginning to choose longer but safer routes, bypassing this luxury stopover to protect their goods. Perhaps the most painful blow for Dubai is not losing a few ships, but losing its very reason for existing as a global logistics hub. When a massive link like Jebel Ali is shaken, it appears to trigger a tidal wave of disruption, affecting everything from electronic components to everyday consumer goods you order on Amazon. The world seems to be learning an expensive lesson about putting too many eggs in one basket sitting next to a powder keg. Dubai once prided itself on connecting all routes, but as container ships begin choosing voyages around the Cape of Good Hope instead of passing through the Gulf, its position seems to be fading. Perhaps we are witnessing the end of an era where a small city could orchestrate the flow of goods for an entire continent. There is something quite painful about seeing some of the world's most advanced cranes now standing still under the blazing sun, waiting for ships that may never return with the same frequency. Isn't it strange how a logistics empire built with billions of dollars can be neutralized simply because people no longer feel safe passing through its gateway? In the real world, safety is always the most valuable currency, and it seems Dubai may have just lost its wallet. When a butterfly flaps its wings in the desert, it can trigger a storm on Wall Street. Many people still shrug it off, thinking Dubai is just a luxury playground for the ultra-wealthy on the other side of the globe, with no connection to their retirement accounts or investment portfolios. But reality seems to be proving the opposite in a harsh way. Why can't we simply ignore this? Perhaps because Dubai is not just a city. It is a financial octopus with tentacles reaching into every corner of the global economy. Look at the UAE's sovereign wealth funds like Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, ADIA, or Mubadala Investment Company. We are talking about entities managing assets in the trillions of dollars. From landmark skyscrapers in London to tech companies in Silicon Valley and financial hubs in Singapore, Gulf capital seems to be everywhere. When Dubai runs into trouble, these funds may be forced to restructure or pull capital from international markets to put out fires at home. Can you imagine what happens when large amounts of stocks in the S&P 500 are suddenly sold off to cover losses in the desert? It seems that even a sneeze in the Middle East can give financial markets from New York to Tokyo a cold. Another aspect that many may have overlooked is the origin of the capital that once inflated Dubai's bubble. In recent years, Dubai appears to have been a favored destination for money from Russia, India, and China, investors seeking a safe haven from sanctions or instability back home. Now that this oasis can no longer guarantee safety, these investors seem to be the first to hit the sell button. Perhaps they are realizing that betting on a city with no real production base, located at the center of geopolitical tensions, was a costly mistake. Those who once dismissed the boring stability of Western markets to chase luxurious illusions in the desert now seem to be scrambling to return. After all the glitter of gold and diamonds, the value of an economy grounded in law and protected by long-established systems still appears to be something money cannot buy. You may also be wondering whether tonight's news will call this a correction or admit it as a systemic collapse. It seems that once the first dominoes have fallen, stopping the entire chain from collapsing becomes nearly impossible. In a world where everything is interconnected by complex financial threads, no one is truly an island, not even a billion-dollar artificial island shaped like a palm tree. Recently, we have seen the UAE government and central bank trying to roll out rescue packages, injecting liquidity into the system as a way to keep the ship from sinking. Yet it seems like they are trying to use a band-aid to patch a crack in a hydroelectric dam. Take a look at the bank's efforts. They can print more money, they can pump billions of dirhams into the market. But there is one thing no printing press can create: trust. Let us ask you this. When you see the market bleeding red due to geopolitical instability, are a few promises from officials enough to make you keep your money in place? You see, these bailout measures seem to be targeting the symptoms, not the disease. They inject liquidity to save banks, but they cannot stop the very reason people are fleeing safety. The global ultra-wealthy, who once viewed Dubai as a polished safe hidden in the desert, now seem to be undergoing a permanent shift in mindset. From now on, when they look at the Gulf, instead of seeing a safe oasis, they may only see a region filled with latent risks. Once the illusion of peace is shattered, trying to piece it back together appears to be a futile effort. Dubai once had something that seemingly no other place in the Middle East possessed: stability within an unstable region. That was the ace card that allowed it to attract capital from around the world. Now that this stability has been compromised, Dubai suddenly looks like any other city in the region. Why should an investor accept risk here when they can return to long-established stability in states like Texas or Florida? The appeal of gold-plated penthouses now seems to fade when compared to the sense of security provided by the legal and defense systems of the United States. It seems the world is entering a phase where glossy narratives about a city of the future will be examined through a far more realistic lens. Isn't it almost absurd that people once believed building taller and lowering taxes was enough to stand outside the tides of history? Perhaps we are witnessing the final chapter of a novel about excess and spectacle. All current rescue efforts seem to be nothing more than attempts to buy time, but once the clock has struck, no one can turn it back. Have you ever felt that sometimes the best way to protect your assets is not by chasing distant, glittering opportunities, but by trusting tangible values right beneath your feet? The answer seems clearer than ever. After all, perhaps we should view Dubai as the boldest and most ambitious economic experiment of the 21st century, an attempt to prove that financial brilliance and architectural grandeur could stand firm amid volatile political realities. Yet the events of 2026 seem to deliver a harsh reminder. No matter how dazzling an economy may be, it cannot detach itself from the realities of security and defense. The city may still endure. Skyscrapers like the Burj Khalifa will continue to rise proudly above the desert sands, but the Dubai dream of a tax-free paradise, an absolutely safe and permanent haven, seems to have officially reached its final chapter. It appears we must accept a truth. In a world full of variables, the fragility of modern financial hubs is something even the most brilliant minds can hardly control. After witnessing the cracks in an empire built on trust, do you believe there is still any safe oasis left in this world, or are we all entering an era where uncertainty itself becomes the new normal? Will you choose to place your trust in traditional values at home, or are you still willing to bet on other luxurious dreams across the ocean? Leave your thoughts below. One last thing before you go. This video is not intended to predict the future, but rather to provide a different perspective on existing geopolitical risks. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing is not what is about to happen, but rather what we believe will never happen. Thank you for watching until the end. See you in the next videos. And if you want to continue unraveling similar illusions, systems that seem solid but are built on invisible weaknesses, subscribe to the channel.